Last weekend's incredibly British UK Fight Night served up some pretty interesting performances from some of the UK's strongest emerging talents, and though as far as legitimate unavoidable prospects go, Tom Aspinall well and truly stole the show with his perfect performance against Sergey Spivak, but global audiences seem to be pretty enthralled by the promotional debut of Liverpool's own Paddy Pimblett in the main card opener. And it makes sense, the dude simply has that special it factor that most fighters would kill for. I've watched Pimblett progressing through Cage Warriors for about 5 years now, as he began creating buzz for himself, his blonde hair and generally cheerful demeanour making him instantly memorable to anyone who managed to catch a glimpse. And I suppose the thing that struck me about Paddy the Baddy back in the day, more so than his fighting skills, not that they weren't there, but it was his magnetism. That's what really stood out. And even like today, as much as there is some negativity that he attracts, it was definitely more on the adoration side of things. This guy was selling out the Echo Arena in Liverpool years ago, earning huge receptions for himself each and every time he walked out in front of that home crowd. His time as champion of the Cage Warriors featherweight division ended about 4 years ago, after a defeat to the future UFC rostered Nad Narimani. But that didn't extinguish Pimblett's appeal. And look, I know that earning the support of your hometown isn't the craziest accomplishment, but I don't know, there was definitely something about Paddy back then, and I think that Saturday's showcase proved his ability to cross over to a more global market. Since losing his title, the only loss that Pimblett has sustained was at the hands of the Bellator prospect Soren Bak, a guy who at 15-1 does seem to be the real deal as far as legitimate future lightweight elites are concerned. During the time between then and signing with the UFC, Paddy went back-to-back with first-round submission wins over the course of 1 calendar year, leaning on his strengths to pick up the type of form necessary to ensure that Dana White came a-knockin'. And I suppose that's what made his UFC debut both worrying and completely and utterly enthralling. Paddy is a game and willing striker, and since foregoing the featherweight division in favour of lightweight, has shown increased power in his hands, which is quite promising. And when he got in there with Luigi Vendramini on Saturday, he went in there looking like a man determined to make a statement about that power he possesses, as well as his overall warrior spirit. Say what you want about going for that approach in a test as unique as your UFC debut, Paddy stepped up to the plate and managed to put on a display that lived up to the role that he seems to be looking to fill within the UFC roster. He got in there, he put the pressure on, fought through some hard shots, and closed the show in a manner that had me wishing that we just could have seen that all in front of a crowd, instead of just a handful of people in the apex. But the point that some of you Paddy Pimblett neophytes might not be aware of is that this newest addition to the UFC's lightweight roster is a grappler first and foremost, an aggressive submission artist whose striking successes have not been the story of his career so far. And I do understand the desire to go in there to swing for the bleachers, bring home a big win and potentially a nice bonus check, a fitting way to open up your UFC account. But Pimblett's shortcomings as far as his striking defense was concerned were pretty clear to see. His head movement was all but non-existent, and though the commentary team were heavy on the fact that his hands-down style allowed him to fire off shots at odd angles, it does seem as though that offense is more on the side of wildness than being intentional. On a side note, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads, before leaving a comment to let YouTube's algorithms know that we are fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. Obviously, looking at the lightweight division as a whole, there are levels upon levels of strikers, one's far more dangerous than Luigi Vendramini. That said, Paddy hits hard. He can take a punch, and once the fight hits the mat, he's a very credible submission threat. And while that loss against Soren Bak certainly showed us some of the limitations in his game, he's in the UFC, he's 1-0, and as things stand, it does look as though he's going to be one of this year's breakout stars. I was definitely worried at points during that opening round, as Pimblett ate shots. Ate them well, admittedly, but the type of shots that superior fighters would have found more frequently. Look, I'm definitely not alone in thinking that based on the performance we got out of Paddy the Baddy on Saturday night, a more competent striker would have chewed him up on the feet. And at this point, Pimblett again is in the UFC. There are no gimme fights. That said, I do believe that the Vendramini test was a suitable one, and though it showed the world some of the very clear holes in Paddy's game, specifically in his defense, he didn't exactly stack the odds in his favor through his approach on Fight Night. Not to say that he got away with a lucky win, but Pimblett definitely let a lot of his future opponents know about a potential route to victory. And who knows, maybe it was just a case of burning off some UFC debut excitement because again, his grappling skills will likely serve him well within this lightweight crop. But moving forward into his second fight, I would like to see a relatively similar level of competition for Pimblett next time around. Given where that striking defense is at, he clearly needs to work on ensuring that those shots that Vendramini landed aren't as accessible next time around. But look, the guy is clearly a warrior, and he's very clearly going to be an interesting addition to the lightweight roster. And though my assessment may seem a little bleak, he's still relatively young in his career, and with such a huge debut under his belt, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if the reaction to this debut and the confidence it gives him lights a fire beneath him to make these necessary improvements. To his credit, Paddy came into this bout in incredible shape, and everything I've heard from him seems to indicate that his head is in the right place. All in all, it was one hell of a debut, and as a fan of this scintillating Scouser for years now, I always love to see a regional level favourite turn up in a big way on the global stage. But what did you make of this opening matchup for Paddy the Baddy Pimblett? And based on what we've seen so far, where do you place his ceiling within this stacked 155-pound division? Do let us know your opinions in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.